Okay, we're going in now for my book, Holy Grail Wisdom Quotes in alphabetical order on letter G by me, P. Rogers. Okay, first person is Horace Greeley, and this is a very important quote. He said, "It is impossible to enslave mentally, socially, a Bible-reading people. The principles of the Bible are the groundwork of human freedom." That's an important point. That's why, the World Communist Party, which includes the Democratic Party of the USA, it wants to get rid of Christianity, to get rid of the Bible. It hates white Christian men because white Christian men, traditionally, the founding fathers of this country, they're the ones who most strongly, out of all the people in the whole world, said, we want freedom. We want free speech. We want the right to own property. We want all the rights, guaranteed to us now in the Constitution, okay? They don't like that. The big money players who control the whole world, and they use communism as a way. The reason why big rulers like communism is because it gets rid of God. Once there is no God, then the person who has the most money is the equivalent of God because they can make the most people do the same thing. And there are no morals. There's no such thing as right or wrong. Right is whatever they say it is, okay? And they basically have the attitude they own all the regular people like a bunch of farm animals, and they could do whatever they want. If they want to sleep with your daughter, you don't have a choice. They own her. She comes over like a farm animal, and they have fun with her. I'm telling you, that's what it means, okay? No one's allowed to have an independent opinion. All right, well, if you look also at slavery, they try to pin slavery on the United States. BS, okay? Slavery has been around since the beginning of recorded history, and the Christians are the ones who've gone around stopping it. The Christians stopped slavery in England. They stopped slavery in USA, okay? If you look at slavery, it still goes on in lots of places all over the world where you don't have Christianity, okay? It goes on in Africa, okay? My father comes from Ireland, okay? And the Brits didn't have a problem with enslaving the people from India. They didn't have a problem with enslaving the Irish people. In India, they don't have a problem with having a whole caste system of people who are called untouchables and are, their job, a whole bunch of them, their job is they're born to clean toilets, okay? They're not allowed to do anything else. So if you don't think in Islam, they still have slaves, as far as I've heard. I've heard all kinds of things. And the women, they don't have a lot of freedom. Man, look at the difference between a woman in the United States and one of those places, Okay, so anyways, that's why they don't want Christians in the Bible, because it prevents slavery. It brings freedom. Christianity, capitalism, and the Constitution. Those are the three pillars of freedom. Okay, Wayne Gretzky. Now, Wayne Gretzky was this magnificent hockey player, and one of the things I especially like about him is, look what he says. He says, he was kind of small, kind of physically weak, kind of slow, but he became the best hockey player in the world. And he said, I couldn't beat people with my strength. I don't have that hard of a shot. I'm not the quickest skater in the league. My eyes and mind have to do most of the work. So that reminded me of Dave Schultz, my wrestling coach. He was a guy who was fat, dyslexic when he was in school. They teased him as, fat, stupid retard. And he got really good at wrestling based on his technique. He wasn't, we trained as a team. At the beginning of freshman year at Stanford, we ran sprints on the hills and stuff. He was slow. We went in the weight room. He lifted weights with him. He was weak. He was kind of fat, a little pudgy. And I'm like, how did this guy become world champion? National champion, world champion. And it's just because he has such great technique. So what I'm trying to say is, I like that, because you could never be as tall as some guy who's 7 feet tall. You could never be as quick as somebody who's got a lot of quick, fast twitch muscle fibers. You could never be as strong as some of these guys who are really strong. So what I'm saying is, but you could learn technique like Dave Schultz. You could practice and improve your coordination at hockey, as Wayne Gretzky, maybe not as good as him, but it's something that a regular person could do. It gives you hope. I totally patterned myself after the Schultz brothers, man. I wanted to be just like them, and that really helped me in school. It helped me in wrestling a lot, and then I also use the same thing in school. Learn every single little technique you can to study skills and memorization techniques. That's how I got great at school, just by imitating their approach. Okay, so that's a good approach, something that's doable by a regular person. Okay, next speaker here, Edward Gray. He said, the lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see it lit again in our lifetimes. The First World War was basically like a suicide attempt of Europe. Totally freaking stupid, Christians killing each other, and they still continue doing the same thing today, like a lot of what you see happening between Russia and Ukraine is just a convenient way to kill Christian men from Ukraine and from Russia. Okay, Christians tend to be pretty stupid. Okay, it's been going on for a long time that they'll kill each other. Look at, the Civil War in the USA. The Irish would fight against the Irish. They're so stupid. Okay, quote from Franz Gilparzer. He said, "Talent produces only fragments of beauty and originality. A genius integrates everything into a beautiful whole and with beauty and originality." Yep. Okay, that's a pretty good quote. That reminds me of like what Schopenhauer had said. Schopenhauer had said that if you look at the average professor, they'll lecture on a topic. He said the best of the best typical college professors, they're like a painter who simply gives you a palette of paint, has them organized in some type of systematic way, but never really connects anything or makes that much sense out of it. He said, but a great writer, the amateur who loves the subject, they'll connect everything. They'll make sense out of it. And that's what's really helpful. Okay, quote here from Alfred Whitney Griswold. He said, "Could Hamlet have been written by a committee?" No. Creative ideas do not spring from groups. They spring from individuals. The divine spark leaps from the finger of God to Adam. Yeah, magnificent paintings and magnificent books, they're written by individuals. Okay, all this group stuff, it's BS. Okay, you need a team maybe to run an entire medical service, but to do a creative work of art like the guy who invented the Mac computer, Steve Wozniak, you need an individual genius. Okay, an individual person who has devoted themselves to developing that skill for many years and who knows how to really optimize it. Okay, all right, a couple more quotes from Griswold, and it reminds me of the name in American Vacation, the Griswolds. Okay, so he says, "The source of better ideas is wisdom. The liberal arts inform and enlighten. They enlarge a man's capacity for self-knowledge and self-improvement. They are the wellsprings of a free society." That goes back like to ancient Rome. It was the aristocrats who wanted a liberal arts education for their children, so they learned how to speak. They learned how to be articulate, how to think on their feet, to be able to, speak in public with skill. That's what you want for a free man. And that's why when you hear people saying, oh, we don't need liberal arts education, that's BS. You really do need. I've tremendously benefited from reading all the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, and Cicero, and the Renaissance, the Reformation, Counter-Reformation, the Victorian Renaissance, the Catholic Revival, all of that stuff, and studying tons of history. It's extremely beneficial. You see how people behave, and it enables you to think better. You read the greatest books ever written, and you become more articulate, better able to express yourself, better able to negotiate, better able to debate. All of those things are highly valuable. Okay, Andy Grove. He's a computer expert guy that was making like the computer processors. He died of prostate cancer. There was interesting stories about that. We won't get into them now. Well, actually, I'll tell you one quote from him. He said, "Every canary sings its own song." And what he meant was, if you go to the surgeon, they recommend surgery. If you go to the radiation oncologist, they recommend rad-onc. If you go to the hem-onc, they recommend some type of chemo or something, or the urologist. So anyways, here's a quote by Andy Grove. He said, "If brutal facts are not faced, brutal reality sets in." Yeah, if you don't realize what's happening to Western Christendom, it's going to accelerate the rate at which it occurs. Okay, Andy Grove continues, "How well we communicate is determined by how well we are understood." Yeah, so you got to make sure that people understand you. You have to understand what it is that you are better at than anybody else and to mercilessly focus your efforts on that. Yeah, a company focusing on its skill point. Only the paranoid survive. Yeah, you got to have your act together and be with it as a company. Anyways, that's the quotes for today. Hope you found those helpful.